Radio Raheem here with Eddie Hearn, stateside here in Los Angeles. It's always a pleasure to have you on my side of the pond. You know, there are huge things happening in boxing, and it's been a while since we had a chance to talk. So actually, there's a rebroadcast happening right now on HBO with Canelo and Triple G. I didn't think there was going to be a lot of controversy when that fight was over, being that I saw it ringside. But in a week's time, I've heard some people thinking that maybe Canelo did win, maybe it's a draw. How'd you see it from your side?
Do you know what? Disgustingly, I haven't watched the full fight in full, so I'm very sorry. I've watched plenty of the rounds, but I haven't really sat down and scored it. Sometimes when you get a bad scorecard, it actually takes away from the fact that it was quite a close fight. Like, it sounds like most people had Golovkin winning the fight, but maybe by 1 round or 2 rounds. So a draw's not really that controversial. What is controversial is 118-110 to Canelo. So I think it sounds like most people thought that Golovkin won, but unfortunately with a card like that, it's really magnified, you know, really the dispute in who won and what on earth was this card in a score that nobody has given. Like, nobody has scored the fight like that. Right. In fact, I haven't seen anyone give it to Canelo by more than 1 or 2 rounds, if anyone did, you know. So yeah, but you know, I said to Tom Loeffler the other day, listen, it's not the end of the world. You know, you'll do it again and you'll do double the buys, so chin up.
You know, it's interesting to me. I've seen fights in person, obviously, on both sides. When I say sides, I mean here in England. And it seems, I could be wrong, but it seems like the decisions come out a bit more fair there. There's a little bit less controversy, I find, over there. Do you find it to be so? And is there any difference in the way judges are selected or how you go about figuring out who's going to score your fights?
Not really, because actually a lot of the judges that are used here are also given appointments and responsibilities in the UK as well. Adelaide Bird is a good example. She's judged our fights on a number of occasions. Actually, Errol Spence against Kell Brook, she was a judge for. And most of her cards have been quite solid. She was a bit wide for Errol Spence that night, but she was also quite wide on Carl Froch against Mikhail Kessler too. But generally, she's been quite solid. I know there's been other cards where people think she's been out on, but it's really the promoter's job to object to an appointment of a certain judge. So it doesn't mean that the commission will just overrule, you know, and just say, yeah, okay, we'll change a judge. It's up to them. But, you know, a lot of people talk about corruption in boxing, and, you know, if boxing was corrupt, I wouldn't tell you anyway, but I work in the game and it's not. Do you know what I mean? And if you're corrupt, you don't put a card in of 118, 110. Do you know what I mean? You put like 115, 114. And I don't see the corruption in boxing. What I see is some bad scorecards and some bad judges. That's bad for boxing, you know? And people get tired of fights happening where wrong cards have gone in. Don't forget, scoring's subjective. So just because you think that Golovkin won the fight by 2 rounds doesn't mean you're right, you know? But when you get a card that no one agrees with, I mean, we had a fight recently, an IBF fight, Lee Haskins against Ryan Burnett for the world title. Ryan Burnett's our guy. He won every round, more or less, and scored a couple of knockdowns. We get in the ring after the fight. They announce it's a split decision. It's like, what are you talking about? It was 120, 108, 119, 111, and then 120, 108 the other way. The judge got the fighters mixed up, right? And it's like, what the fuck? I mean, this is not good for boxing. This is embarrassing. Luckily, the result was the same, but what are you doing? And these are the guys that, you know, you have to remember, the futures of the careers and the careers of fighters are in the hands of these people. So whether it's reviewing them a certain amount of time, whether it's an age restriction, it's difficult. You know, people talk about ex-fighters getting involved, being judges, but then ex-fighters have friends in the game. So you might be an ex-fighter of me, and you're all of a sudden you're judging one of my fights. How's that fair? You know, so it's a very difficult one, and but we mustn't let fans lose faith in the sport because of bad decisions.
That brings me to the huge heavyweight, I guess, bottleneck that's coming. Obviously, anytime Joshua fights, it's a huge fight. You guys sell out in a matter of minutes. It's insane. But the fight that everyone's really been waiting for in the heavyweight division, even more so I would say than Klitschko, is this Wilder-Joshua fight, which we seem to be one step closer to. Was the decision made to have this Pulev fight and then was there any discussion about Wilder Ortiz happening a week later for the express purposes of getting these two guys together? Nobody has an extensive layoff other than the other. How did these two fights happen within a week's time, and did you have anything to do with that decision?
I'd like to say I put the whole thing together, but no, it's complete fluke and just happened. I mean, Pulev is our mandatory, which we had to fight. Ortiz was our WBA mandatory, which we have to fight next, obviously not now. And we tried to actually make that fight and secure his signature for February. Wilder Ortiz is a really good fight, and now Wilder is in a real fight. He hasn't been in any fights yet, not his fault, but Joshua's coming off a Klitschko fight. Now Wilder's fighting Ortiz. If he comes through the other side, we're starting to really build a super fight here. And Joshua will fight anyone, it's not a problem. So he's going to box Ortiz, then we look at the winner of that fight, in the spring, summer of next year. I'm pretty sure you will definitely see Joshua against the winner of that fight before 2018 is out, for sure. Hopefully the first half of that year.
So you're saying that if Wilder beats Ortiz, Joshua's still planning on facing Ortiz?
No. The winner. Okay. The winner. Okay. Yeah, we want the winner of that fight.
Okay.
Joshua wants the belts. Right. I mean, Joseph Parker boxed tonight. I mean, it was one of the worst heavyweight fights I've ever seen. So his stock has just plummeted, but we still want his belt, But I'd like to see some Brits face him. But really, Wilder is the fight. Wilder, Joshua, two young, explosive, fast heavyweights that look good. That's a super fight. And it's going to get bigger and bigger. But he's got to beat Ortiz first. It's a tough fight.
Where does that fight happen?
Wilder, Joshua?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if it becomes a pay-per-view fight over here, which I think it is, we have no problem coming to the States. Obviously, it's massive in the UK as well. So Josh is easy. The goal for us after the Pulev fight is to have a couple of fights on the road, and whether that's one of them, we'll wait and see.
There's a big fight happening in New York. Two guys that are really technicians, right? We've got Lomachenko and Rigondeaux.
Yeah,
it's the kind of fight that people don't usually look at the guys in that weight division. Rigondeaux's had his critics about whether or not it's exciting, but for boxing guys like us, it's really exciting. Yeah. How do you see that fight, and will there be excitement there? Do you see that as a fan favorite?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame really that it's not, and people watching this might say, what is he talking about? That it's not as big a fight as it should be, because It's a trade fight. You've got Lomachenko, who he's an unbelievable fighter, probably struggling to really crack into the casual market yet. That might change. And Rigondeaux, who has never broken into the casual market, but two incredible fighters. It probably won't be as big as it should be, but it's a great fight, and they're the kind of fights that you sort of normally you would go, that'll never happen. Do you know what I mean? Like when that was talked about, I thought, that'll never happen. Fair play to Top Rank and all the fighters involved. They've stepped up, they've made the fight.
Being a promoter and coming from that perspective, you're right. I wouldn't think that was a fight that could get made, but maybe it's because of this ESPN deal and the fact that television is really embracing boxing in this way because it's not pay-per-view, it's not a paid channel. As a promoter, is that good for boxing? Do you mind the extra competition? Are you looking to put fights on ESPN? Like, how does this?
It's great because when there's competition, everybody's trying to improve. It doesn't matter whether it's a promoter, whether it's you guys. All of a sudden now there's more, social media channels, more YouTube reporters, more websites. You want to have bigger views, don't you? I mean, it's just like Coogan and those guys. Everyone's like, how many views do you get for that video? It's a competition, and business is a competition, and promoting's a competition. If there's a guy who is my competitor in a promotional sense, I want to put on better shows than him. My network wants me to put on better shows than another network, and now you've got more networks than ever in boxing, so more desire to put on big fights, and it's great for boxing. So people talk about 2017 being a great year for boxing. It is, but 2018 will be better in my opinion. I think we're going to have 2 or 3 years now of real solid action in boxing, and you look at the fights that have come together this year, it's been incredible, and I think it's only just beginning.
And lastly, with Andre Ward retiring unexpectedly, most people had him at their #1 spot in the pound for pound list. Who takes that top spot now, and how do you think that realigns boxing?
I think probably Lomachenko. I mean, I rate Crawford very highly as well. Lomachenko probably skill-wise. Golovkin, a very good performance against Canelo. So, those guys as well. I think Andre Ward's had a great career. I think maybe a few injuries might be, you know, on his mind as well. But he's achieved everything you can achieve in the game. So, you know, respect to Andre Ward and everyone clambering for that pound-for-pound spot.
Joshua's knocked out every single opponent he's got. He sells out arenas and stadiums in minutes. What is it going to take for him to claim a spot like #1 pound for pound?
Well, it's really proving yourself against the elite fighters time and time again. That's, you know, I believe he's pound for pound probably top 10 already, Joshua, through the Klitschko fight. But you have to establish yourself in your career. You have to go on and beat the best consecutively to be that pound for pound great. And that's the plan. He's still learning. He's only had 19 fights. He's a baby. You know, give us 2, 3, 5 years. Hopefully this guy goes down as one of the best ever.
I can't wait to see that Anthony Joshua Pulev fight in just a couple months. I will be on that side of the pond right there with you. Thank you always for your hospitality when I come over there. I'm happy to welcome you here. It's Radio Raheem with Eddie Hearn.